reaction in the atmosphere is absorbing into the ocean, as the ocean's a carbon sink, and this breaks down and produces the carbonic acid. So because I've studied the effect of ocean acidification on marine organisms, I then had this interest in ocean acidification, and now my PhD is looking at a method to monitor the carbonate chemistry of the Arctic, and the Arctic is where it's happening at the fastest rate, as carbon dioxide absorbs into the water more readily at colder temperatures. So at the poles is where the carbon dioxide uptake is the most.
And with that monitoring, that's ship-based or plane-based, or how are you doing this monitoring of the Arctic Ocean?
So I'm hoping to develop a method to use satellites. Okay. So satellites send down microwaves, and they can get the temperature, the salinity, chlorophyll A, and you can put them into a formula and then get different carbon chemistry parameters basically, and that's how hopefully for each individual regions we can develop algorithms for that.
So what we're saying is we're using these different measures. So we had salinity, so the amount of salt in the ocean. Yeah. Was it temperature was another one?
Yeah.
And then this chlorophyll, that's a sort of plant matter or algae matter in there. And you combine these in a computer program, and that gives you an idea of the amount of available carbonate ions.
Yeah, so different carbonate ions.
Different carbonate ions, and from that we can kind of work out what the pH is and how ocean acidification is affecting these. Wow! So you're doing all that via satellite. Why bother coming here? Why are you here, Hannah?
So doing it remotely is all well and good, but you if you didn't collect any data in the field, how would you know if that was correct?
Okay.
So we need to ground truth those models and those what's coming out the computer, and so collecting is important. We have the in situ, which is data that's collected in the field, so we can compare it.
And do you hope to come to the Arctic on a number of occasions, or will you be using other people's research?
So I'm going to be using a global database, which means that I can get several different points. And just from my week here so far, I can really appreciate all those samples collected by other scientists, and how the amount of effort and hard work that's gone into just getting a few samples. Yeah.
So, I mean, you probably had an idea about how challenging research in the Arctic might be, but can you describe sort of what it feels like, or some of the challenges that you've faced since you've been here?
It sounds stupid, but until you actually experience minus 25 degrees, you don't actually realise how cold is. The finger pain was a new one I've never felt. So some of the samples, the plastic, we're towing a plankton net, which is like a V-shaped net, and we basically have to do a blank, which we have to hold up in the air to make sure the plastic particles aren't coming from the air. And if you're having your hand, which has only got a really thin liner glove on, and then this big rubber thing, and then you're holding it out for 10 minutes while the boat's moving, your hands get very cold. So I think experiencing the finger pain.
The finger pain. Welcome to the Arctic.
And then just the added complications of things freezing. At one point we had to get the kettle out to try and manage to get our sample out, because it froze in the tubing. And we also had like big clumps of ice in the plankton net that got stuck in there, as well as like the floor of the boat becoming quite slippy as well, which was precarious at some points. And I mean, as the spray was coming up along and was moving along the boat, it was actually freezing on the windows as well.
So I mean, the spray was freezing immediately when it was sort of out of the sea, and there was an iceberg or two. Which adds to the interesting boat work.
But
incredibly beautiful, but very cold and somewhat painful.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to ouch, where does cold hands feature? I mean, it's not just being cold; it's actually being painful, isn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, it's manageable pain, but
Manageable pain.
it's you can feel it for sure.
Maybe we can do. We do have online, and maybe we can post this on the live chat. What we call a blubber gloves activity, where students can put one hand in iced water, and they can also, which is warmer than the seawater, because of course seawater doesn't freeze until about minus 1.5 degrees Celsius. And then one hand they can make a blubber glove using lard and some sort of like marigolds or whatever, sort of washing up gloves. So you can test the difference. So see how, so Hannah was holding her hand out for 10 minutes in a freezing spray. I don't suggest you put your hand in a bucket of water for 10 minutes, because then that might cause some permanent damage. But you can definitely start to experience the pain. When you do start to experience the pain, do take your hand out very rapidly and make sure it is nice and toasty afterwards. So next question coming through is, with your research, do you also plan to complete field work in other locations which are a bit warmer?
Not for my PhD, but maybe along, because I am primarily focusing on the Arctic Ocean. But my previous work, I have completed projects in tropical countries and the Mediterranean. Worked quite a bit in, so I have been to warmer countries and I've experienced the lovely heat. But I mean, working in the tropics also has its downfalls as well. So.
Really? It's all sounds like sort of palm trees and sort of wonderful beaches and everything else. What are the downfalls of working in the tropics?
Well, it's like the complete opposite. You can get dehydrated, sunburn, sunstroke. There's normally loads of mosquitoes. You have nasty tropical diseases. People get bad like tropical ulcers, which are these big infected mosquito bites. They're kind of like, I've never had them personally myself, but I've seen other people. They're quite disgusting, where you have like pus, basically very pussy ulcers. When I worked in Tanzania, we had sandflies laying eggs on our feet. You have to cut the eggs out your foot. That's quite disgusting. We don't get that in the Arctic, so everything has its ups and downs.
So there you are, everybody. You can either cut eggs out of your foot or risk losing your fingers to frostbite. The delights of marine fieldwork.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you finished your master's in research looking at, I believe, seagrass meadows. And why did you then choose to go on? What was the pull of doing research even further? The attraction of a career in academia?
I really enjoy research. I really enjoy learning and discovering new things and building to the knowledge base. But I also really enjoy teaching, so I would quite like to go on to, once I finish my PhD, to maybe do a bit of teaching in university as well as research. So that's my end goal. I really enjoy like interacting with students. I've done a bit so far at the university, and I hope to do more in the future.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic. And I mean, does academia offer you that breadth of different opportunities? So you could be doing field research, or you could be putting together a research team, or you could be teaching. There's probably lots of people think it's just one thing, but
no.
How varied is a career in research?
I mean,
or academia. Sorry.
Well, research and academia are always dependent on funding, but if you have the right funding, you can have very varied career. Lots of academics do teaching and research, whether it's in the field. I think most fieldwork tends to go on during the university holidays, so they're not teaching. But also you can teach in the lab, so lots of different things you can do. So it's a nice varied career, which keeps it interesting.
Brilliant. And imagine there's students here who at some stage might consider a career in academia. What are the challenges of a PhD compared to maybe school, and then compared to an undergraduate degree?
So a PhD is very self-driven. You have to be very self-motivated. Your supervisor isn't there saying you have to be in at 9 and then go home at 5 or 6. You have to do all the work. Getting your work done is all on you. So yeah, I mean, if you're really falling behind, your supervisor will be like, oh, do you think you should do this or that? But it's mainly, it's very self-driven. So you have to be highly motivated and put a lot of effort in. So.
And how do you find that? Is that suiting you to be?
Yeah. I think it's nice because you have the flexibility. So, for example, if it's a really nice day and I want to take the afternoon off and go for a walk along the coast, or go for a swim in the sea, I can do, and then I could just do that work which I would have done in the afternoon, in the evening, or at the weekend when the weather's not so nice. So, as long as you don't actually have anything in your diary set for that day, you can kind of work what hours you want to work, which is really nice to have that flexibility.
And in terms of diversity, I know that we've got a very diverse audience watching. Do you feel that being a woman has had any drawbacks, or and what advice would you give to any girls watching?
I'd say I've never experienced any problems because of my sex, but looking at senior academics, I've always noticed there's definitely a high male bias. There's always more men than women, and so when you do see like Kerry, which I think she's on tomorrow, she is an amazing role model because there actually isn't many senior women in academia, so it's been really cool to get to know her and learn from her. But I think it's definitely hopefully changing, and that women are becoming more senior, but it's still something that needs to be worked on. And I think, if anything, the high male bias from senior academics only motivates me further to try and get there myself.
And any advice to girls watching, and boys?
If you don't succeed at first, try again. There's no harm in being rejected hundreds of times. Doesn't mean that. Just keep going and just apply for something else.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Coming back to this issue of ocean acidification, why should we care?
So, as I said earlier, the decrease in pH is affecting marine calcifying organisms. So lots of, say for example, coral reefs, they calcify, and a coral reef is a habitat, coral is a foundation species, it's a habitat for many other species. So even if one species is not directly affected by ocean acidification, loss of or loss of in particular, as it is such a remote place, it's hard to get to. We experienced some flight delays. There is very little in situ data, and it has like a high seasonal bias because obviously we're saying it's challenging this time of year to sample, but it'd be even more challenging in the depth of winter when it's dark. So actually understanding this full picture of the carbonate chemistry, so that's to do with ocean acidification, how it's changing all the different molecules in, and then how understood that whole picture, and then how understanding how that's going to affect marine organisms as well. That's like quite vital for us to see, or just learn about the bigger picture.
Brilliant. And just to unpick a little bit of that, so we talk about the Arctic it being remote, and so we don't have a very good picture, even though it's going to be the first ocean affected, or it's happening here first.
Yeah.
And then this seasonal bias point is the biases that our understanding is all built on sort of, not all built, but a lot of it's built on summer data.
Yeah.
Whereas in other oceans we might have a fuller
Yes.
picture.
Yeah.
So you'll be up here in January then.
Well,
we'll go sampling in the dark with the aurora borealis, the northern lights dancing overhead.
It'll be make some good pictures.
Make
sure.
some good pictures. Well, minus 20 to start with, even before we add on the wind chill. I think that what can we do to help improve the health of the oceans is the next area. So it's an important place to understand. It provides a huge amount to sort of humankind, but it seems that it's being damaged by human activity. What can we do to help the health of the ocean?
So to start off with, we can reduce our carbon footprint. So if you normally get a lift to school by a parent or a friend, try and walk or get public transport. Or if you're like traveling anywhere, get public transport over driving. And then secondly, you can reduce your meat consumption. It doesn't have to be going full out vegetarian or vegan, just maybe not have meat every single meal a day, or have like one day a week where you don't have meat. You can also buy local, so the produce, it could be the same, but instead of it being from all over the world, it could be from a local farm, so that's less carbon footprint in that one produce. And then we can also join schemes to protect our carbon stores. Now, carbon store are habitats and ecosystems which store carbon, and so they're reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The important marine ones are seagrass, salt marsh, and mangroves, but they're the less well known, and often we think of like as a carbon store the rainforest as well. So there's lots of things we can do, and simple everyday things, just changing small habits, can make a real big impact.
So, I mean, the ocean, like the rest of the world, let's look at our carbon footprint and work on that, and also protect those amazing habitats that store carbon at the moment, whether they are terrestrial or marine, which is fantastic message. It seems that every week we're getting, 1 million species at risk, biodiversity threatened. We're going to go over whatever limit of temperature increase. I mean, is it too late for the planet or for the oceans to do anything?
No, it's not too late. The models that predict, you have the IPCC models.
And the IPCC is
International Panel Climate Change.
Okay, great.
I want to say, I think that's what it stands for. There's a scenario where if we do nothing, and then it's how much we reduce our carbon output by. And so obviously the more we reduce our carbon output, the better it looks for biodiversity and all our ecosystems. So reducing our carbon footprint is a priority at the moment.
So there is hope. It's not too late, but all of us and you guys watching are going to have to take action. There is no more time to talk.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, I mean, it's really interesting. You follow the ocean health debate, and it seems that we have 10 years to save the ocean. The next 10 years are critical, and then those will end, and they've got 10 years to save the ocean. But speaking to people, they say actually this is it. This is 10 years. Now is the 10 years where it's really gonna matter hugely, which is, it feels like that huge sort of weight of responsibility on a sort of planetary basis to actually get up and do something. On which note, do you think more information about the ocean should be taught in schools?
Yes, definitely. I remember when I was at school, we were taught about greenhouse gases, but nothing really to do with the oceans. The curriculum may have changed now, I'm not sure, but but yeah, I think it needs to be. It's not just an individual. We don't need just an individual change, we need a society change, and so everyone needs to be aware of the problems and what we can do to help. So I think the first step would be teaching it in school.
And what would be on your oceans curriculum? What would you make sure that every student knew?
Ocean acidification, I think
Top.
would be number one.
Yes.
Global warming effects, protecting the marine carbon stores. I didn't learn about the marine carbon stores until my first or second year of university. And considering I was interested in it, maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I would have liked to have learned that earlier on.
And do you think that's a problem, that we study all these issues, but we're using terrestrial case studies? So we study the rainforest, but we don't hear about the mangrove. Yeah. We study the impact of deforestation. We study all these different things. We don't study sort of coastal developments or the impact of shipping and cutting shipping lanes through coral reefs and that type of thing. So we just need to switch out sections of our case studies that we use to start using more marine ones. Okay, there we go. I think many teachers could probably start doing that already, because we're still teaching, the science. You can teach food webs and ecosystems and classification and evolution and adaptation, but you just use a different case study.
Yeah,
there we go.
Definitely.
Use more case studies. Huge amounts available on the Encounter EDU website to follow Hannah's push for more oceans in schools. So you've been up here for a week. You've had quite strongly formed views about the planet and what we should do to care about it. Has this had any effect on your view of the planet, being nearly on top of it?
I think because global warming in the Arctic is having a mass effect across the whole of the Arctic Ocean, reduced sea ice. And Nick, the base manager here, was saying that normally the sea ice, just where you saw all the open water, used to be. When did you say?
I think 2005 was the last time that there was proper sea ice in the fjord.
Yeah, and that's quite sad, really, that this is my first time experiencing the Arctic Ocean, and I'm not seeing how it should be. I'm seeing the result of human impact. So I say that's probably like the biggest thing.
And busy on base, lots of research and sampling. Do you have any free time to relax? And B, if you do, what do you get up to?
So after sampling and come in, we have to process all the different samples, whether they need to be put in the fridge, freezer, whether the labelling is correct. Then we have to type up all the data into a spreadsheet. But we do get a little bit of free time. We normally have quite a relaxing dinner where we sit over there in the dining hall, and it's a beautiful glass windows where normally the reindeer are having a little munch, trying to get the nice shoots through the snow. And so that's really nice, just to chat, get to know the team and watch the reindeer. And also Nick has fantastic stories to listen to as well.
So Nick Cox, the station manager, his interviews are online and on the YouTube channel. 44 years of polar experience, both in the Arctic and Antarctic, and a wealth of information to share. So do have a look at those as well. The most amazing experience in the Arctic so far, what's been the highlight?
So we saw a minke whale a couple of times, but I feel that's a very cliche answer. So I'm going to say the sea angel we've managed to get from one of the plankton trawls. So we managed to get it out underneath the microscope, and it's just beautiful to look at. And Nick had never seen one before, and when Kerry showed it to him, he was speechless. They literally float like this around. They're a sea slug, and they're pretty spectacular.
They're amazing. A sea angel, but with devil horns.
Yes.
I think they're one of the most amazing creatures. Coming on to some very sort of not very personal, but sort of your personal experience of being in the Arctic. If and I know it's only be a week, but if you could have one food teleported to you, what would it be?
Broccoli. I love broccoli, and we haven't had any fresh vegetables, and so it's only been the frozen kind, which is nice. And then the food is spectacular. Don't get me wrong, but fresh broccoli, that would be lovely.
Anything crunchy, I think.
Yeah.
it's all fairly. I mean, it's amazing what the canteen and the mess hall does to provide great food for so many people. But most of it is based on frozen food, so there is very little crunch.
Yeah, that's very true.
Very little crunch. Any crunchy greens would be fantastic. Next up, what do you miss most about home?
As much as I love this 24-hour daylight, it's really hard to get to sleep too. So I actually do miss the dark. When I've been sleeping with an eye mask and like a headscarf over my eyes to try and block out the light.
Really?
So yeah, I'd say the dark.
Amazing. So bring back the dark. Come. We've got this sort of like January expedition sort of being penciled in now. Sort of bring a lot of broccoli in your luggage and 24 hours of darkness, which will probably be tough in a different way.
Yeah, definitely.
Question come through. I know you're only 6 months into your PhD and you've got another sort of 2.5 years, 3 years to go. Any plans? You talked a little bit about doing more teaching, but any other plans post PhD, Dr. Hannah?
Not as yet. I think it would be depending on what postdocs come up and.
Postdocs are the jobs that are available.
Yes. So where they come up and what field, and go from there, I think.
Brilliant. And if you were not a researcher, if you hadn't followed an academic career, you'd left school, you'd scuba dived, done your degree, what job would you do? What other job would you like?
I'd probably still be like scuba diving. I'd be a scuba diving instructor somewhere tropical probably, or an activities instructor, something like that. Yeah. So definitely something outside. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we have gone a few things. We've got a question about sunlight, which we discovered has come through. Apart from the sunlight, what has been the biggest challenge working up here? Sunlight, colds?
Yeah, the cold was a big challenge. Equipment breaking, and we don't necessarily have a replacement for it. Luckily, with the plankton net, the marine lab here, amazing, managed to lend us another net. However, that one broke, so we're like one sample down, which is unfortunate, but these things happen. So I think we're so used to being able to do one click, and we can have things delivered to our door. Whereas here, when stuff breaks or we might have forgotten something, it's not an easy solution. You have to make do and mend.
Make do and mend. Yeah. Brilliant. Any of the students watching say, you know what, Hannah's tops, and I would love to become an oceanographer. What should they do from sort of age 12, 13?
If you have any community engagement projects, so there's lots of citizen science projects around the world now that you can get involved in. So just have a Google, have a research, and try and get involved with citizen science projects early on, and then you get the experience and you build up your skill set, and then you can go and do some volunteering, and then and then try and do sciences. For your like equivalent A levels.
So high school,
yeah. And then go off, and then you can apply for university and go from there.
So a lot of volunteering, do an online search for citizen science projects, try and find some of those near you, volunteer. What kind of volunteering are we looking at here?
I know around where I live at the moment, there are coastal, you can join, they teach you how to survey a rocky shore. So basically surveying rock pools, and then that goes into a big database. So things like that are quite good, or even doing like beach cleanups, because you can actually do a beach cleanup not just to help the marine environment, but also as a scientific study as well. So you can look at the different types of plastic they've washed up on that beach. So yeah, anything like that, look at your local conservation charities and get involved that way.
And even if you don't live near the coast, the skills you might pick up from doing this in a forest or in a desert, those would be transferable to a career in marine sciences.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Perfect. So get out there, volunteer, get to know your local environment, but do it in a structured, scientific way. Great advice. Coming up here, do you collaborate with scientists from around the world or on your project, or is it mainly focused in the UK at the moment?
So the global data set I'm going to be using is data collected from around the world, from different scientists globally. So in that way, I would say I was collaborating. I've got one supervisor based in Norway, half in Norway and half in China, and then the rest of them are based in the UK. But I'm going to a conference in Italy next week, so I'll be meeting lots of scientists in my field and be chatting to them about their work and my work and collaborating in that way. So yeah.
And what's it like working with scientists from around the world? Is that how science is done?
Yeah. There's no point of like finding something amazing out and then just it sits in a filing cabinet somewhere. For science to progress and you to learn from others' ideas and then to learn from yours, you need to communicate it to the scientific community and then the wider global community. I think maybe the past where science wasn't communicated so as well as it is now is definitely in the past, and I think going forward, academics are trying to be more engaging.
Brilliant. Going back to a sort of more sort of practical, less lofty sort of question, of all the things that you brought up with you in your bag, what piece of kit has turned out to be the most useful?
I had some very warm shoes, which has definitely been the most useful. Save my feet from getting cold. Yeah. So they've got some nice big insulated liners, and they were definitely my favourite piece of equipment.
So toasty toes is definitely makes everything nicer.
Yeah.
And is this the first time? It's not the first time you've done field work, but it's the first time you've done field work in the Arctic. But what is your favourite aspect of doing this kind of remote field work or expedition?
It's exciting. And when we first flew in to the base, it's kind of really like so spectacular. It really gives you that like the wow factor and just the amazement of your surroundings. And even if it is a slightly challenging day, you can just look out the scenery and you're like, wow, I'm really lucky to be here. I think that's probably my favourite part of it.
Brilliant. And is there such a thing as a typical day here?
No, every day is different. Like we said earlier, like first day was -25. Second day was very big swell and the boat was going like this, which makes it very hard to find detailed bits of work when you're feeling a bit queasy and you're kind of being flung all over everywhere. And then the last few days have been glorious sunshine, very calm, a lot easier to do work in, so completely different.
And I mean, but you have a daily routine, or is it different every day?
It depends what sites we're going to. Here they have like slightly later breakfast on the weekends. We have to work around there because I mean, our boat captain, he does have a line on the weekends, so we just kind of work around that.
Brilliant. You've been scuba diving in tropical regions. Scuba diving in the Arctic in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. If I get the opportunity, I would definitely say yes.
Definitely say yes. Wow. So how do you think it would be different? Would it be, I mean, what's the coldest you've scuba dived in?
About 4 degrees, I think. So not massively actually temperature-wise colder. It's just the air temperature when you get back up, I'd say would probably be, and you would want to check that nothing had frozen before getting in, so I imagine. But I mean, I'm not an expert, that's what I could guess.
Well, maybe we'll talk to, because I know Nick's done a number of dives in Antarctica, so we'll have to ask him what are some of the things to think about when diving in the polar regions. Very sadly, Hannah, that is all we have time for today, but amazing questions. Thank you so much for sending them all through. And thank you so much, Hannah, for being part of AXA XL Arctic Live.
My pleasure.
As you mentioned, tomorrow we have Dr. Kerry Lewis with us, and we have a focus on marine plastics and microplastics. So do join us for our session tomorrow. And then on Wednesday we have Ellie, who will be coming from behind the camera to in front of the camera to talk about science communications and a career in adventure science and sharing that with wider audiences. But thank you so much for taking part today, and it's a very big Arctic goodbye from us. Bye-bye.
Bye.